Hi there, welcome back to your Apatros review. In this episode, Coronaween 2, Part 4, and the film reviewed, Demon Seed, directed by Donald Cammell in the year 1977. Hi there, welcome back to your Apatros review, your guide to the wild world of science fiction, action, horror cinema with me, your host, Mila Sipka. Film spell name, just look at the channel name. Now, this is basically Part 4 of Coronaween 2, my second year running of Coronaween, which is basically Halloween mixed with coronavirus pandemic. And for future generations, you'll see what a crazy time this was. Now, for the fourth film reviewed for this special is Demon Seed, which was a 1977 science fiction horror film directed by Donald Cammell, written by Robert Jaffe and Roger R. Hirson, based on a Dean R Koontz novel, one of his early ones. Now, the film came out first in New York, in the US, on the 8th of April 1977. Then it went in general release on the 15th of April 1977. Then in the UK on the 6th of November 1977. And then in Italy on the 31st of December of that year. So basically New Year's Eve for 1978, the Italian saw premiere. Now the cast is Julie Christie, Robert Vaughn, Fritz Weaver, Garrett Graham, and Barry Kroger. Based on the early horror novel by famed horror writer Dean R Koontz, which was written a good 4 years before the movie came out, Demon Seed is a very strange, very disturbing, and very nasty science fiction horror thriller made by the crazy director Donald Cammell, who had only made 4 films before the studio's meddling in his projects drove him to suicide in 1996. As a fallen piece of El Primo 1970s technophobia in full flight mode, Demon Seed is essentially a tale of an advanced ultracomputer designed with an organic construction that fills an entire factory-sized room and comprised of RNA, which technically makes this computer type of virus, since RNA is genetic code viruses. For everyone else, it's basically DNA. Like humans have deoxyribonucleic acid. That's what DNA stands for. This advanced computer, named Proteus 4, which was voiced by Robert Vaughn, the man from Uncle, who was so disinterested in the project he literally phoned his lines in, clearly has a line in self-moralizing. He refuses to complete a task of engineering a deep-sea mining project, and believes that he has the power of intellect necessary to rule the world. So his creators at the Icon Company attempt to restrain him. But Proteus has discovered that his creator's divorced ex-wife has a house that is completely automated and has a terminal that he can access freely without anybody knowing about it. Pretty much the house next Tuesday. Prompting him to take over the house's operating system. For the next week or so, Proteus decides to use what little time he has left before his creators pull the plug on his existence by manifesting a flesh and blood body for himself so he can basically get the ability to gain a soul. To achieve this, he takes the ex-wife, child psychologist whose daughter had died of leukemia a few years before, the stress of which ruined her marriage, and used every trick in his bag of psychological torture to convince the poor woman into allowing herself to be impregnated by Proteus using the synthetic sperm he had engineered from her body tissue, and to carry to term a cyborg baby with an organic body and a synthetic brain. After a fair bit of psychological argy-bargy between them, Proteus wins the contest of wills, makes himself a metal penis with that weird polyhedron robot thingy that looks in the basement lobby as himself, and knocks Julie Christie up. Weeks later, and the cyborg baby is born. Demon Seed is a film that has a certain cult following amongst aficionados of weird cinema, but as a science fiction thriller, this film falls down a flight of stairs to land squarely on its face. The genre this film belongs to, the technophobia genre, was outdated when this came out. It feels like a nasty version of the old school atomic scare flicks of the 1950s, and the market for those things went out as soon as personal computers became easily affordable and accessible, thus robbing the technophobes of the mystery of the computer's powers. Those 2 minutes and 20 seconds of trippy visuals Proteus uses to keep Julie Christie's mind docile when he has sex with her are just subpar, and far from reaching a quality that made the infamous Sing 2001 Space Odyssey prize hit with the Stoners. Some of the computer visuals also look like you could get them one of those After Dark screensaver programs that came in Windows 95. My sister and I used to amuse ourselves on our first computer, which was a Windows 95, by playing the After Dark program and basically changing the settings on each of the screensavers. And the polyhedron thingy is seriously unwieldy. Just watch it handle a test tube. It makes the same sounds as the doors in Star Trek the original series. That robot wheelchair one arm looks frigging ridiculous. especially when it uses a high-powered laser to attack its opponents. Some of the tech does look very primitive by today's standards, in particular the massive floppy disks, but that was unavoidable given the 3.5-inch floppy disk didn't come out until a decade later, and CD-ROMs are just as far away from being invented, so the tech couldn't be any more advanced than it was. There was also the problem where the film was massively boring during most of the film's second act. Although you have to give the actors a good deal of credit for their performances. Julie Christie goes through scenes that will completely destroy any other actress, with an emotional performance that makes you root for her. Although very little background is given about her, other than the fact she's a divorced child psychologist and she lost her only daughter to illness, which makes the cyborg baby version of Proteus that proves to be a dead ringer for the late child something of a strangely uplifting experience. The original version of the book, Koontz rewrote the book in 1997, making the original version effectively out of print, had only two characters, the woman and the computer, and went into very graphic descriptions of the computer's impregnation process to the point of almost being like one of those adult videos you can get under the counter. This film expands the story to include the inventor, various background characters, and even the basis for Proteus' existence. I also saw something of a critical ignorance in Proteus' grand plan. He believes that the only way to get to heaven is by being a human, but he doesn't seem to realize that the actions he took in getting his human body leaves him wide open for a fate worse than mere non-existence. An eternity in hell is waiting for Proteus, since he won't stand any chance of reaching heaven. I have by this point still not read either of the book versions, so I cannot at this time state whether the movie shapes up to be superior or not, but on what little I do know, I would consider this movie to be a strangely superior adaptation by virtue of expanding the story out and going full board the concept, but with a tastefulness that was absent in the book. Also, there are plenty of people out there who believe the movie to beat the books in quality, although I wouldn't consider Demon Seed the movie to be anything other than an average quality curiosity, mainly for the somewhat repellently nasty concept, the ridiculousness of some of the tech, and the silly visual poetry Proteus shows Julie Christie when it knocks her up. And Vincent Canby of the New York Times was right. The cyborg baby, when it covered in its shell, does indeed look like Mickey Rooney dipped in brass. All things considered, Demon Seed gets a C, 4 out of 10. This is a fairly average horror movie. As science fiction, it lacks a fair bit, but is more effective as a straight-up horror movie, with some surprisingly intense performances and one hell of a weird concept. But the nastiness of the premise does make watching this easy enough to be considered enjoyable. If you're a fan of cult films, in particular cult sci-fi films, this pretty much will be up your alley, but it's not an easy film to watch for most people. Now for gore and nudity, no gore, or for one poor techie gets cleanly decapitated by that polyhedron robot, and Julie Christie shows off her boobs, butt, and very briefly a crotch behind the frosted glass shower door when Proteus plays peeping Tom on her. Okay, but that's it for Demon Seed. That Prince gets a C, 4 out of 10. It's average. I mean, there are plenty of critics out there who think it's a bad film, but plus I'm kind of middle of the road about it. It does have its strengths, and particularly Julie Christie's performance and just the weirdness of the story, but it's a very strange film. But aside from that, not really much for unless you're a fan of the books or a fan of cult films or just the weird films out there. Okay, that's it for that one. Now, that's the fourth and last film I'm doing for Coronaween. The next episode is a little bit of a special surprise. You'll see it when it comes up. Basically a short story I wrote for the Coronaween. You'll see. Okay. Hope you guys are staying safe. Now, I do not do requests, but if you have any questions about DVDs or one of our particular films, just hit me up in the comment section. I'll answer. Hope you guys are staying safe. Take it easy and enjoy your Coronaween.